I got this kid, Lou Gehrig. He could fill in for you, rookie. Gehrig never left first base for some 1,000 games, 3,000 games, something like that. And no one remembers Wally Pipp except me. And I don't want to be the next Wally Pipp, but you're definitely a Lou Gehrig. So I appreciate you filling in, Rich. It's nice to have you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm glad you're all here because there's a great conundrum facing us in the tech journalism community today. And it started on Thursday with Bloomberg Business Week. And some amazing reportage, 17 anonymous sources in government, three-letter agencies, Amazon and Apple, said that Chinese spies had placed a tiny rice-sized microchip on supermicro motherboards in 2015. These supermicro motherboards were used in many, many places, servers by Apple, the Department of Defense. We even had one because this all came to light. Now I'm going to say this a couple of times in this story because I want to emphasize, according to Bloomberg Business Week, we even had one because it was first discovered by Amazon when they were doing their due diligence. They were about to acquire a company called Elemental Technologies. Elemental makes a streaming box, a box we've used for some years, a very expensive box that takes our video, compresses it, and then feeds it out to Ustream, YouTube, Twitch, Mixer, whoever it is that's restreaming our stuff. These Elemental motherboards, Amazon, during a routine security audit before the acquisition, found this little chip. According to Bloomberg Business Week, the chip was posing as a minor support chip on the motherboard. Nobody paid any attention to it. But when the motherboard was first booted in a server, would modify the operating system, phone home the Chinese military, and help the Chinese military hack these servers in the Pentagon. Every Elemental's widely used. As I said, we use it. I presume But then the teen sources, anonymous sources, Bloomberg Business Week, highly credible source. The next day, Amazon, Apple, even the freaking Chinese government unequivocally deny it. They say it never happened. Apple said the story was wrong and misinformed. The Department of Homeland Security yesterday, well, actually their denial was a little less unequivocal. They said, we have no reason to doubt that Apple and Amazon are telling the truth. That's not exactly like no, it never happened. That's like, well, we have no reason now. In this particular circumstance, we currently have no reason to doubt. Nevertheless, the denials from Amazon and Apple were really strong. No, it didn't happen. Bloomberg's completely wrong. How does this happen? Is this a Actually, I'm going to poll you. We'll start with you, Rich. Who's right?
Oh, man, I feel like this is kind of the biggest fear of kind of the tech world, right? Like all this stuff is made over in China. This is kind of the perfect way of infiltrating the systems with a tiny chip that nobody recognizes or even cares to notice. And, they can take control of these things. They can modify the system on startup, whatever they want to do. So it's tough for me to believe that Business Week has this many people saying this happened and it hasn't happened. And I understand why these big companies, including Amazon and Apple, are strongly denying this because it's pretty bad for them if this happened to them. So I sort of believe it. And I think that just reading the story, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, I couldn't put this thing down.
Oh, yeah.
It was like so well written and so like I just wanted to know more and more and more. But I think what was missing in this story, to me, is kind of the consequence, like what they did with these little chips. And maybe I missed that, but I didn't see did they take down something? Did they, or is this all just like kind of laying in wait for something that they want to do in the future? That was kind of the part that I was confused upon.
It's a great question. Ant, who do you believe?
Initially, my gut is actually siding with Apple, just because of their history regarding security and privacy.
To be a PR to issue two statements.
Yeah.
All right, quickly about it, and then I just think back to other scenarios in the past with Apple, as far as like when we had that shooting at that school in California, and they wanted to search the phones, and Apple was trying to do the right thing from a privacy and security standpoint. So my gut just says I'm going to go with Apple. Now, had it just been Amazon saying no, that's not true, I'd have had the
Shouldn't trust it. Apple said specifically, quote, on this, I mean, this is as strong as you can get, we can be very clear. Apple has never found malicious chips, hardware manipulations, or vulnerabilities purposely planted in any server. Daniel Rubino, what do you think? You've been covering this for a long time. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards there's got to be some truth to this. Now, what we may not know are the exact details. Actually, we don't know the exact details. And there could be some crossed wires here in information. Maybe some hardware was shipped to Apple, but it was caught in time and never deployed it, in which case both things could be true. But yeah, you know, there's been a lot of reports around Huawei and other companies too, right, about this possibility, this threat, and it works both ways. You know, there's concerns too, the U.S. companies doing the same. I don't know, my hunch says that there's probably some truth to this. It's just a question of to what extent damage was done. But none of this is surprising. I've been covering this industry for the last couple of years. There's this big concern over the strength of Chinese tech and its influence on the U.S. economy. Everybody knows that the way you wage war is changing from a pure military exercise to more technological or information, in the case of what Russia's been doing or accused of been doing a lot recently. So just because the companies deny this stuff of national security, they can be quite frankly told to don't talk about this because you don't want to expose those vulnerabilities. Maybe there's active investigations going on. We don't know all the details here, but I find it hard to believe with 17 sources that none of this is true. I think it's more about degrees at this point.
Zach Whitaker, who writes about security at TechCrunch and has worked most recently at CBS, has been covering security forever. He says, welcome to the murky world of national security reporting. He says, even with this story, my gut is mixed. There is one potential scenario that maybe means both of these, that the companies aren't lying, but the story is true. I have to say, to add myself to this poll, there's no way Bloomberg Businessweek runs this story unless, and they stand behind it, by the way, unless they absolutely have evidence of this. 17 sources, all anonymous, yeah, but you'd have to say Bloomberg Businessweek is making this up. That's too many people to not be true. So here's maybe a very narrow, maybe the Apple PR team that responded, and this was John Gruber's theory, didn't know about it, right? Something like that happens. You're not going to send out a memo to everybody in Apple saying, hey, by the way, look what we found. You're going to keep it very quiet. So maybe a handful of people at Apple know, and the ones who don't know are the ones making the unequivocal denial. There's also a possibility there's a U.S. government gag order, although Apple, again, says we are in no way under a gag order. But again, maybe the people who are under the gag order are a handful of people, not the people writing the press release. That's the only way I could see both sides being accurate. And I don't think Apple PR is lying in such an outright. They would say nothing, or they would say little, or they would say, there's lots of ways they could slice this without saying, no, it did not happen.
Yeah, it's odd that they came out so strong in their denial of this, like immediately, and emailed the media, including myself. And that rarely happens when they, usually the way Apple works is they kind of talk to the certain media that covers the beat that they want to get the story out with. This time they just sent out a blanket email through their legal guy denying it and kind of linking to this, which I found to be very heavy-handed. So it's like one of these things where you want to believe that, but at the same time, it seems like it's overly like what are they? I understand they have a lot to lose in this, but it just seems like they really want to make sure that like, no, we are not involved in this. This is not true at all. I wonder if their reporter's going to be invited to the next Apple event.
Oh, stick, maybe.
Right.
Probably not. We'll be seeing you at the next Apple event. As somebody who hasn't been invited to an Apple event in years, I can say that stick isn't that. Go ahead.
I see this conspiratorial angle is that this is really a story that vested interest in undermining Chinese tech, or at least eroding the trust in it for such circumstances. We obviously know about the Qualcomm attempted buyout, how that was blocked, and
Do you think Bloomberg got played by the U.S. intelligence?
I mean, in a way, no. 17 seems like a lot. On the other hand, this is kind of what intelligence is supposed to be doing, and so I don't think we can discount it. I still think there's actually a threat from China in a sense. Why? Because why wouldn't they, right? It's just that's how counterintelligence works. We do the same thing. So there may be some, like I said, there may be some truth to this, but it may have been played up by some people in the government too. Even this current administration is very much against, giving China too much leverage when it comes to manufacturing. And so, I don't know. It's a hard story to follow and believe, especially when you're talking about espionage, counterintelligence, and national security.
Bloomberg ranks the company's denials are countered by 6 current and former senior national security officials who, in conversations that began during the Obama administration and continued under the Trump administration, detailed the discovery of the chips in the government's investigation. This has been going on for several years. And it sounds like Bloomberg reporters have been working on this story for several years. One of those officials and 2 people inside Amazon provided extensive information on how the attack played out at Elemental and Amazon. That's another thing. You would not only have to... it's one thing to say, well, you can easily get 17 CIA people to say, yeah, this happened. I mean, that's their job. But then you're getting people inside Amazon confirming it. The details match. The officials and one of the insiders also described Amazon's cooperation with the government investigation. In addition to the 3 Apple insiders, 4 of the 6 U.S. officials confirmed that Apple was a victim. 17 people. There's something's going on.
Yeah, I think that's the truth.
But we don't know what it is.
Information warfare. It's the new battle of the 21st. Super dangerous, super hard to counter. It's believe who you trust, and when you go under institutions around you, people can't even trust news sources right anymore. So it's we're in a brave new world. It's not. I'm kind of nervous about it. When I did political science, undermining classic institutions is the first way you destabilize society. So
That's exactly
there's a real threat to it.
That's exactly right.
Well, and from the consumer standpoint, obviously this was kind of big server things, but for the average consumer, I think it makes you think twice too. With everything that you have in your house, we're all putting these smart speakers in our homes. Where are those manufactured? This is becoming a reality for the average person to think about the stuff that we're carrying with us and the stuff that we're putting in our homes, the systems, and this becomes like very clear that, oh my gosh, like this is something of course we've thought of, but not into this detail. And you're just like, this is exactly how it's done,
right,
in a big way.
Right.
IoT is a huge security vulnerability right now. And Microsoft Azure Sphere, which has been in the headlines recently, is their first attempt at making these sort of systems more secure for everybody, anyone who's manufacturing devices. But right now it's Wild West. People are just putting microphones and internet into all these devices. We're putting them in our homes, and there's no regulation or checks. It's going to come back to bite us. I guarantee it will. It's just a matter of time.
Well, really, if you believe...
Go
ahead, Ed.
As much as I said I trust, what Apple's response was, at the same time, I still have that little fear in the back of my head of the button that the Chinese could just push at any time, because of everything that I'm looking at right now was not made right here in the U.S., and they could easily just push a button to make things just go nuts on me and maybe
security issues and could detect these problems. And if you had to determine an adversary with nations, North Korea, it seemed to me that it would be very, very difficult if is made in China. Almost.
Yeah.
So the supply chain is coming out of China. And even if you're buying a phone made in Korea or Taiwan or Thailand or India or Brazil, I doubt there's one consumer electronic device in your house that hasn't something that was manufactured in China.
I mean, I'm sitting here looking at junk on my desk. You know, this is a power distribution board. Pretty sure this was not made in the USA. You know,
Does it say Super Micro on it? Just look for that.
Yeah.
It's like the equivalent of the Intel Inside sticker. Can you imagine Super Micro had one of those, and now everyone just sees those? I'm going to go from the flip side, though, on the fact that all this stuff is big business. I mean, clearly we love to believe in these conspiracy theories, and we love to imagine that it's like us versus them versus, Russia, I do think there, of course, are elements of that in our world, but at the same time, I want to believe that they know that the business that they're going to make off these components are way better than, the business they're going to make off of the whatever marketplace they're dealing with.
Absolutely.
The shady stuff.
But what's going on in China, and it's true in other places too, is there's more than one constituency. So there are absolutely, I would say most of the Chinese government wants to maintain good relations because, after all, we're their biggest market. On the other hand, there are, and this hack, it's presumed came from the Chinese military. There are, I'm sure, hardliners in the Chinese military who say, just in case, let's be ready for cyber warfare. No, I don't think it's monolithic. And I completely agree with you, Daniel. They could be a conspiracy from the United States government who wants us to say exactly that.
It's crazy.
At this point, the only way America can hack the rest of the world is by putting something in a Frappuccino.
That's the only
about
thing.
the only
thing we're exporting is Starbucks.
Wait, we got Facebook though. Facebook, I hear, is not so security.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
What a world! What a world we live in. But it was almost inevitable when the tools we use got so complex. Jerry Pournelle, I've mentioned this to Jerry before he passed, in his book Lucifer's Hammer. The story is that a giant asteroid hits the United States.
Great book.
Yeah, isn't it good? And there's just a few survivors in the world who kind of have to pull together existence again. But he points out that we live in a world where we use stuff every day. We have no idea how it works, nor could we recreate it if we had to. And that's your car, that's your freaking microwave oven, let alone your computers and your phones.
I'm guilty.
We're all guilty. And I don't think there's any one person who could do this, who could recreate this. So that's kind of the consequence of that is there's a huge amount of trust in using all of this stuff. And if you had an actor who decided that he didn't care about being trusted or wanted to subvert this, it's a little, is it chilling or is it industrial espionage? I mean, so a lot of these servers are used by the Department of Defense. These elemental servers alone are used all over the place. The CIA, the NSA, they're used in drone placement. They're used controllers. They're used all over the place. And
Okay, but here's anyone cracked one of these open and found this little chip? I mean, wouldn't that be the first thing that one of these companies would do? Is kind of look in there? I mean, I know it's only been a couple days since the story came out, but wouldn't that be part of this reporting?
I mean, I think that's what the original report actually did say, was that when Amazon was looking to buy Elemental, they sent their boards for review to a third-party company who found a little chip on there that was not part of the original diagram designed for that chipset, and that's what the red flag was. And then I think trying to figure out what it does or its potential was a matter of sort of reverse engineering it. But
I can admit that everybody who has a super micro motherboard and has the capability. The problem is who has the capability. There's a lot of little chips in there. Have you ever looked at them? And they're labeled, but I mean, I don't know how you would have to take the thing apart, test each one individually.
Right.
Non-trivial.
And who has those resources?
An Elemental costs $30,000. I am not taking my And I actually proposed this to our engineering team. I said, because we have a new Elemental from AWS, so that we just got a few months ago, so that will not, obviously. But we had the old Elemental from this time frame. We were using it back then. But unfortunately, we had to send it back. But
where's the iFixit teardown?
I want to tear down. iFixit maybe could do that. Yeah. They specialize in identifying unlabeled or poorly labeled or incorrectly labeled chips. I think we can all agree that there's potential for this to happen, whether it actually did happen or not. And I think Bloomberg didn't get it wrong. I just don't understand what happened. What the response is and why the response is that. And I don't think Apple is so venal as to say, well, that will hurt our business. We better lie. I agree with you in that case. Yeah, there's no way that's the case. I think it's much more that whoever issued this release didn't know, if anything. And nobody's talking. Maybe even Tim Cook doesn't know. I don't know. All right. I thought that would be fun to start with a mystery story. Let's take a break. We'll come back and talk about stuff we do know. One thing we know an awful lot about is what the Google event on Tuesday is going to be. This is the most leaked product I have ever seen in my life.
Air quotes.
Oh, okay. So you think there's well, let's find out. Do you have a theory about why all this stuff has been leaked? Maybe this is intentional.
Once, twice leak, I get that. But when you get into there's 12 different leaks.
Engadget today bought a Pixel 3.
That's
from
crazy.
a Hong Kong supplier, and they did an unboxing. It's not announced yet.
That's calculated PR.
All right. I want to hear your theories. Let's take a break. Ant Pruitt is here. Always great to have Ant. Contributing writer at Tech Republic, photographer. You still doing the Friday night videos at YouTube?
It's paused right now because of football season. My kids playing ball, and sometimes we end up traveling on Friday night fall. So I've sort of been doing them here and there just to keep them rolling, but I still love doing it when I can.
It's nice. It's always, there are plenty of on Ant's YouTube page. You have lots to look at. Also, Daniel Rubino is here. He is executive editor at Windows Central, one of the key Windows and Microsoft journalists out there. We'll talk about the Surface event in just a little bit, and kind of a big oops. In fact, when we come back, let's talk about it. The big oops for Microsoft. Rich DeMuro from KTLA, Rich on Tech.tv is his website, and his podcast is there.